Hi. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I feel like I need to get a laugh out my system. But hey, there was no intro music, but we're here. I'm back. I'm back making quite the entrance with my lateness, so please forgive me. But I'm Sarah Delau, of course, and it's Monday. This is my show. Hope you guys didn't forget. And I'm joined by the wonderful Lewis Aaron.
Hello, hello,
Hey,
hello.
how
Happy
are you?
Monday. Did you have a nice weekend?
Yeah, lovely weekend. I mean, the weather wasn't so great, but it meant that I got lots of work done. Work has been incredibly busy, so it's been good to kind of just like knuckle down quite a bit over the weekend when the weather isn't nice. So, yeah, how's
Yeah, well,
yours?
you know what? I'm glad the weather's not nice anymore. I will say it. I don't care. I live in a roof attic, and a roof attic, is that the way to say it? Like a top floor attic flat, and it's just been disgusting. So I'm glad it's cold. I can't wait for autumn and winter.
No, 100%. I love it when it gets dark at 4 o'clock and I'm like, yes, time to snuggle up and
Yeah, who needs
cancel
vitamin
all the
D?
plans. Literally. But no, it's great to have Lewis. I'm really excited to get his insight. But coming up on tonight's show, 70k pounds later, 70,000 pounds later, reforms McMurdoch is taking a quote unquote break. Support Gaza and apparently get cuffed. And 29 protesters were arrested on suspicion of terror offences. And Tony Blair got away with war crimes once. Now his institute is involved with a Gaza scandal. As always, though, do remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We'll be getting to your comments at the end. So please make sure that you're busy in the chat. But onto our first story. So it's another day and another Reform UK implosion, but this time it's involving James McMurdoch, who has apparently self-suspended from the party. In a Sunday Times expose, it says that McMurdoch alleged to have borrowed tens of thousands of pounds under the government's bounce back locks scheme. Loan scheme, during the COVID pandemic in 2020, specifically £70,000 in COVID bounce back loans taken out by two companies that have been linked to him, supposedly. Now McMurdoch's out here spinning it like he's a noble soldier falling on his sword. He released a statement on Twitter saying, Thursday evening, I received a phone call from a journalist who followed an extremely aggressive and clumsy line of questioning where he confused assets, profit, and turnover. He confirmed that the phone call was off the record, and I advised him to please be very careful with the details and consult a technically qualified person. Despite his confirmation that the call was off the record, he has made public reference to it. Yesterday, brackets Friday, lunchtime, I received an email from the same journalist asking me to provide detailed information relating to businesses that ceased trading some years ago. The deadline to provide that information was 6 p.m. the same day. I confirmed to the journalist that all my business dealings had always been conducted fully within the law and in compliance with all regulations, and that appropriately qualified professionals had reviewed all activity confirming the same. He goes on to say, facts. My business dealings have been reviewed by ICAEW qualified professionals. Absolute compliance was confirmed! Exclamation mark. My register of interest was completed with the support of IPSA! Exclamation mark. As a precautionary measure and for the protection of Reform UK, I have asked to have the whip suspended temporarily. Oops. This doesn't seem to be a one-off though. This is the second Reform MP in under a year to implode under a scandal. Do we recall Rupert Lowe, who was suspended over alleged threats, cleared, then he left the party properly raging, calling Farage a coward and a viper? So, two MPs down, five became four, then five again, now four again. It's giving hokey cokey in out, in out. Reform UK is turning over MPs like it's Love Island. I don't know if any of you watch it, but I certainly do if I need something mind numbing. And it feels like every week a new quote unquote bombshell enters the political sphere with a scandal, not a six pack, raising pulses for all the wrong reasons. Labour's calling for an official inquiry. Tories are mocking them as perpetually in chaos. Farage, of course, though, blames bad vetting and has the gall to say it was the vetting company's fault. Mate, you wanted to lead a country and you can't even manage five MPs. Make it make sense. But here's what's really happening. Reform UK presents itself as the anti-establishment voice of the working people. But dig just below the surface, and what do you find? Pandemic profiteering, dodgy companies, MPs who think the rules are for someone else. They're not an alternative to the elite. I'm going to say this again. They are not an alternative to the elite. They're a refined copy with worse haircuts and louder slogans. So James McMurdoch suspended himself temporarily, he says, but this isn't just about one MP. It's about a party that talks working class anger whilst looting public funds with the other hand. Lewis, let me get your take on this. Second Reform MP in a year to hit a major controversy after Rupert Lowe's saga. What does that say about about give me a second. What does that say about Reform UK's candidate vetting and internal culture? Are these just a couple of like quote unquote mavericks, or are they signs of a deeper problem in the party?
It's it's a bit of everything, right? So you could like okay, I would say that the candidate quality is slightly higher than what it was under perhaps UKIP and Brexit, right? We've met people on TikTok Live who were former candidates of the Brexit Party. If you know who I'm talking about, Sarah, a certain Mr. James. When me and Sarah do our lives, there is a guy who comes into the live sometimes called James Buckley. I'll say his name because it's on
Oh,
record that he was kicked out of the
here's
party
Michael.
for, I believe, being like anti-Semitic in the most kind of Naziist kind of way. I believe that's what the article said. But anyway, I've got a long list of UKIP candidates and Brexit candidates that I have saved on a document who have been kicked out of the parties or been reported on for doing some of the weirdest, strangest, even most racist or criminal acts over the last 10 or 15 years. And obviously, corruption exists at all levels. I'm sure there's probably other things that we don't know yet. But it just shows that they don't really learn anything or do really any deep digging, because obviously James not only kicked his girlfriend in the head and put himself in jail, but he's also done this. We also have um, uh, all the other people in the party who have come out since, and they've lost their seat as councillors. I think it's around 12 so far, maybe 12 to 15. It might be more. We've got the news coming out within the last week that there's multiple councils that different departments are now being ran by 18 and 19-year-olds. I saw one report yesterday of, I can't remember which council it is, but a 19-year-old is now in charge of like health and social care for one of the councils, who once said
Yeah.
online that depression isn't real.
Yes.
But what frustrates me though is that any other party would have been destroyed by this at this point. And obviously, it all centers and gravitates around Nigel Farage. So,
Mm.
what has to happen for the party to lose its momentum, lose its uh, the direction that it's going in? I truly don't know. We've got all the people related to criminality from the past. We've got this new scandal. We've got Rupert Lowe saying essentially an authoritarian within the party. And then we've got just his disastrous track record, right? Whether it's
Mm.
Brexit, saying that Liz Truss gave the best mini budget or whatever the hell it was called since like 1979 or whatever the expression that he used. I don't know what will end him. It's dare I say it, it's Trumpian in a sense, right? He's obviously not done anything I would say as bad potentially as Trump has.
Mm.
It's Trumpian in terms of like how shielded he is from just being ostracized.
No, completely agree with you. And actually, I've been saying this quite consistently throughout. I don't even think something like this will hinder reform at the moment. I feel like they are not going to face a total collapse, but could it dent their credibility and momentum? Probs not. I don't think it will. It feels like, because if you've got someone like James McMurdoch who has been guilty of the things that he's done in the past, and then Farage kind of just, saying subtly, "Oh, no, it's because we didn't vet properly," blah blah blah, then I just don't think this is something that's going to impact them in any way whatsoever. But Farage in and of himself is a seasoned chaos surfer. Like, he is just someone who manages to get by when chaos ensues, and he thrives on scandal because he's able
Mm,
to weaponize outrage in a way that still feels relatable to people who won't do their research. It's not enough for people to know that someone's beat their ex-partner, because it will just spin a crisis into some sort of like martyrdom, and that's what concerns me.
Yeah, I do feel like the reform is kind of like the Death Star, right? In Star
Mm,
Wars, if you've seen Star Wars, I hope you have.
I haven't.
Well, the Death Star metaphor is that it's the cliche movie scene where they need to destroy something, and there's one weakness, and it's a one in a million chance that if they pull this off, it will destroy the Death Star. That's the Reform Party, right? It doesn't matter what happens to any other candidate. Um, it has to be Nigel Farage who goes down. That's how you destroy reform. It doesn't matter what happens to anybody else. We've now had months back Nigel Farage saying he doesn't agree with the current abortion laws and wants to restrict them, but he's vague on what exactly he wants to do. And we know he has links to the anti-abortion groups in the US. And then just in the last few days, on his interview on LBC, I think was that on Friday or Saturday, he's come out and said, "Oh, yeah, I don't agree with gay marriage. I didn't agree with it at the time." He said it's settled law, and that's his way of saying I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to. He's saying I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't buy that shit. How many times have we heard that Roe v. Wade was precedent until it wasn't, right? Because when the Supreme Court justices in the U.S. were appointed by Trump, all three of them, each of them were interviewed, went through their proceedings, and they were like, "Yeah, Roe v. Wade's precedent." Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fast forward a year or two later, bye bye the right to abortion at a federal level. I don't think personally, maybe I'm being naive, that Nigel Farage would actively try and pursue the overturning of marriage equality in the UK. But who's he going to open the door to? Who could do it? If he became prime minister and then he got kicked out, and then somebody else more radical came in, and the Overton window continues moving, then yeah, it could happen. It really, really could.
No,
And
it could.
I just feel like it's not getting enough attention. We now have a guy who's running who wants to restrict abortion laws, is
Yeah.
against gay marriage, and it's still not quelling his momentum. It just doesn't make sense to me. Well, it does, but I still can't
Yeah.
comprehend it.
It's hard to comprehend. It's almost incomprehensible. I absolutely agree with you. And you'd mentioned about the two young lads, and I want to speak about them really quickly because I read that on the weekend that Reform UK recently appointed two teens to high stake public roles. You've got the 19-year-old Charles uh, Pugsy, I hope I'm not butchering his name, who oversees children and family services in Leicestershire, and the 18-year-old George Finch, who was briefly an interim leader of Warwickshire County Council, managing a pretty hefty budget while still at university. Lewis, I kind of want to get your take on that. Like, is this just for optics? Kind of doing it as a stunt. Let's get more young people into politics. Let's have them be at the center of all of this. Like, what do you think this is all about?
Well, it's obviously to do with the disorganized party, right? I don't think Nigel Farage is saying put 19-year-olds in charge of these things. It's obviously because power is almost devolved in a way. A council leader who's in charge of a reform council isn't going to email Nigel and say, "Can I do this?" They're just obviously going to do it. And most of the time, they're not doing it because it's for any particular reason other than the fact that there isn't really anyone else to do it. Some of the councillors that they had balloted, like they're just utterly incompetent people. And obviously, I know a 19-year-old. I'm sure they can add to these systems and help out in different ways. I think young voices should be in politics, but they shouldn't be in charge of systems that large at that age. However, a lot of the other candidates are literally people that you could jokingly say that they found like literally just walking down the street, and they've said, "Will you just put your name on this thing just so we can put somebody's name on the ballot?" It doesn't seem like they're doing it out of skill. They're just doing it because it's either the incompetent Facebook dad 40-year-old who is a counsellor who has no experience doing anything, or the smart young middle to upper class pugsy name teenagers. So which one are you going to go with? The quality of candidates that they have is just beyond terrible. But the problem that we have is that how often is it that a local news scandal actually affects something on a national level? You obviously have Birmingham bins and a few other issues here and there. Obviously, the council collapse of Birmingham as well, but I just don't think it's going to get through. I think it's just those types of stories are only going to be seen by the really anti-reform people like us, right? We're going to pick up on it. I just don't think it's going to be something that's embedded into the brain of somebody who could potentially be a potential reform voter in the future, or who have voted reform and they're thinking about not doing it anymore. I just don't think it's going to have literally any effect. The same way that, again, at the weekend, it's not complete, it's not related to this, but it's just the same mindset that people are claiming very credibly that I think it's around 29 now, like people have been killed in Texas. The flash floods that have happened, which have like I think killed like up to like 30 mostly young Christian girls at a camp, and there's some of the systems that Trump shut down through Doge could have like predicted this or prevented this in some way, but people just won't connect those two things and just not care that Trump might be responsible for the death of 20 to 30 Christian girls. Like they just don't care. They won't connect these things.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and like really, really great points as well. They don't connect these things, and it kind of goes back to the. I'll just say this last point, then we'll go to the second story. But it kind of goes back to 75% of people who will read a headline and think that they know what's going on in the world, and they actually don't because they haven't read
Mm.
the article. And I think that that is a
Ooh,
really, really great.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
add one more thing as well because I just
please
remembered I
do.
follow a green councillor. I think his name's Councillor Sam, but I don't know where he's a councillor on social media. And he posted a video this morning claiming, and I'm saying claiming because I haven't seen the original source, this is just what he said, is that when reform came in the council that he works on, they cut the fire budget immediately. And over the weekend, there was a fire somewhere where the first engine got there. It was the only engine in the area. And then because they had to call in another one from another area, it took so long to get there that someone did die. And if they would have had their original setup that they had only a few months ago before it was cut by reform, then the person probably wouldn't have died, as they would have had the resources necessary to rescue the person quickly. But again, that's just what he was counselling, obviously saying as a opposition counsellor. So I just want to put that out there, and I haven't seen the original source of the story. But it's
Yeah,
just like people don't put two and two together. They
no,
won't.
and they won't because it's too much effort, isn't it? But no, really, really great insight. Thank you, Lewis. On to our second story, though. I'm sure you guys have seen it. There's been videos circulating all over the internet. If you're trawling it like me, trying to procrastinate from work, but 29 people were arrested in Parliament Square this weekend, and not for throwing bricks or holding a riot, but for holding signs supporting Palestine action. For the most part, it was seemingly very peaceful, silent. They were stood by or underneath Gandhi's statue, and the Met came in like it was a terror raid. This country seems to be criminalizing compassion now. And if that's not dystopian enough, one of those arrested was an 83-year-old retired priest. Oh, there she is, bless her heart. Forget bomb throwers. The real bombshells in Britain are apparently pensioners with principles, it seems. Um, Lewis, this is quite an insane story. So I've given like a really, really quick intro into this because I feel like there's room for a lot of discussion around it. But what do you make of all of this? Like this is quite a shocking situation. They've been grouped as terrorists, prescribed as a terrorist organization, and now people showing their alliance to Palestine as people who are considered almost um, unruly. So what do you make of that?
Well, yeah, they're now in the same category as everything from Al Qaeda to ISIS, which is just a gross and absolute abuse of power that the government has gone ahead with this. I want to focus on the legal thing just quickly because I don't know how this works from a legal perspective, and I'd appreciate if anybody does know and they could reach out. But this is going to take a weird turn, but hear me out with the Shamima Begum case, right? Or Begum. I always get mixed up.
I think
Sorry,
it's
apologies.
Begum.
Begum.
I
So
say Begum.
that case wasn't about whether she was guilty or not. That was whether the government had the power to strip her of her citizenship, which ultimately the courts ruled that she did. It was never about the evidence against her, which hasn't been presented to a court. It was just based off of the idea of a law that was written, I think, in like the 1970s, where the Home Secretary has the power to do this action based off of what is conducive for the public good, and they're saying that the information that they had about her, which they didn't have to present, was good enough to do this action. And I'm very scared that when this goes to court properly, because the initial ruling was just an emergency ruling, and they're going to court on the 21st of July, that they're going to say the same thing. But I haven't looked into this legislation or exactly how it works, because it might not be a case of where the judge or judges rule whether they're guilty of being prescribable as a terrorist organization. It's going to be a question of, does the government have the power to do that if they want to? And if they
Mm.
do, again, it's very dark and scary because you're setting up, legal precedents for not just the Labour Party who have now abused them, but future parties as well to tap into these powers whenever they want. And just to remind everyone, when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, when you had Extinction Rebellion on the streets and whoever else was out there, Just Stop Oil, she wanted to try and prescribe them as like eco terrorists or however she called them. She said she was intending on using the same laws that Keir Starmer has invoked. Yvette Cooper, and that's very, very, very scary. They are guilty of criminal damage. Okay, that's within the law. Like I think they're happy to be
Yeah.
prosecuted for that, and that's just how it goes. But prescribing them as a terrorist organization, firstly, dilutes what a
Yeah.
terrorist actually is,
I was just about
and
to say this.
secondly, just last week, the government obviously won their court case that they could sell F-35 parts, but in those
Mm.
court documents that they had to submit, they admitted in court that they knew that selling F-35 parts to Israel means they will likely not follow humanitarian and international law. So they know that they've acknowledged that legally for the first time, technically, and they're still happy to prescribe a group who's trying to
Mm.
bring attention and stop the government selling these arms as a terrorist organization.
Yeah, and you said a really great point. Even the definition, because I was looking at this over the weekend, because I was having a discussion with someone, and they were very much on the side of the fact that they felt Palestine Action, it should be regarded as a terrorist organization. They're not my friend. Let me just put that out there. This was on the internet. Just going to put that out there. And they said, well, how would, the definition of terrorism is X, Y, and Z. And they just said the definition off of the internet. Now, the issue with doing that is that the definition that the UK has for terrorism is very broad. And if it's not contextualized properly, then it's definitely misused. The same way that people just say the definition for racism and say, well, we all experience racism. And it's like, well, let's try and posit this in the correct context. But you're absolutely right in trying to like point to Labour and their complicity in all of this. Like, I think Labour as a party have been one that was supposedly rooted in, civil liberties and like trade union rights and this whole idea of like democratic protest. And I think what we're seeing now is like a huge shift in that, this huge ideological shift in that. And it has me wondering, like, is this about electoral like optics? Is this going to look good for them in the long run? Is this some sort of like authoritarian creep, or like something deeper? Because we have a party that is so obsessed with appearing tough, um, rather than standing up with those who are oppressed. And I don't know if this will get me into trouble, but fuck it. Like, I was wondering, would the same energy be held if people were holding Israeli flags, for example, and standing in the same place? And I don't think it would be, because obviously it's coming off the back of what's happened with the damages that have been done to the RAF planes and whatever. But I do feel like there's a huge hypocrisy being exercised here. And more crucially, I feel like Labour and the Tories are becoming indistinguishable from each other. And that frightens me. When it comes to civil liberties, they are becoming so, I can't tell the difference between either of you at this point. And there used to be quite a big difference between the two, but apparently not anymore.
Yeah, like the leadership obviously between the Tories came between. It was supposed to be Cleverly and potentially Jenrick, but they messed up the votes. But I don't know. I don't think we know Kemi well enough to know if she would actually do something as extreme as
Mm.
label them as a terrorist organization. Maybe I'd lean towards she wouldn't. I think Robert Jenrick would, but I don't think James
Really?
Cleverly would either. Which means that I think it's confident to say that this is a move that I don't think a lot of Tories would take. And just to emphasize that as well, I think it was either today or yesterday, the Times as well, which is, definitely a centre right newspaper. They came out and their opinion team today said, like, we fucking hate Palestine Action, but it's a bit far. In the same respect as the conversation that I was talking about before with Jacob Rees-Mogg, massive. Like, he is like, the Tory of all Tories in the most classic sense, and he came out and last year and wrote an article in the Spectator saying, don't like Shamima. She's probably guilty, but the government should not have this power to do what they did to her. And it's weird that there are Tories out there who I know would probably hold the same conviction, as that for what is happening right now, because it opens up a very dangerous path. But this is definitely of the right of, I think, many conservatives. Um, and, just to scare everyone a little bit more, because that's what you have to do in these situations. Just to remind everyone, because I always like to tie it back to the US, because many things, there are many, many mirrors to be held up. When Trump came into power, the way he started using the Alien Enemies Act of like 1798 or whatever it was the government can have the power to basically just round up people and deport them without judicial process, if it's like an invading army. So what he did is he designated a Venezuelan criminal gang, which are terrible and very bad people, called Trentaya Agua. I can't remember the pronunciation. Sorry, guys. He labeled them a terrorist organization and said that the government had intelligence that they were working with the Venezuelan government, so he could justify them as terrorists and therefore invaders, and therefore enact this power which allowed him to round up people without judicial review and send them to a foreign country. Now that's still in court proceedings and it's been temporarily stopped for a while. But we don't have some of the same safeguards in this country, right? We already know that the government can just strip people's citizenship if they have dual citizenship or potential for dual citizenship without going to a court. And if the government is allowed to do this, the precedent will be set where any group of people can just be called terrorists by the government without any providing any form of evidence through judicial review in any single way. So you could end up literally with a Trump situation here in the future. Imagine Farage or someone more radical coming in and saying, oh, all these Afghanistan people that have come over the last few years, a bunch of them used to work for the government or are connected to the government, and therefore that's a terrorist organization, and I'm going to deem them terrorists, and I'm just going to strip their citizenship and deport them all. Because obviously in 5 years' time, there will be people who come over here from Afghanistan who will have citizenship by now, and many have already acquired it. You could literally see this in the future, and this is not a joke, this is not a stretch. Look where we are now. Look where the US has come from 2016 to where they are now. And look where the Overton window has moved in the UK. This is the perfect time for slippery slope conversations, even though people don't always like them. But they are relevant in this situation when you've got an 83-year-old former priest being arrested and maybe being jailed for up to 14 years, a human rights lawyer, and a professor. What world are we living in?
Yeah. Well, it's true. What world are we living in? I ask this question every single day. It feels like we're living in a really, really fucked up one, Lewis. It's really scary. Really, really scary. But no, really great points and great analysis too. Very grateful. If you are enjoying the show, I'm saying this really quietly because I have to remember what I used to say. If you're enjoying the show, then please sorry, my thing's trying to load. It's just not loading. Can you give me 2 seconds? Yeah, but remember to like the stream, obviously, if you're enjoying. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. How can I remember that golden line? And if you want to see us grow, then head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, and there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. But don't put yourself out. As you know, we're all doing this alongside our full-time jobs. I had to take some time off to focus on my full-time job. Unfortunately, I missed a lot in the Turn Left world, but it would be nice for all of us to have this be a full-time thing. But yeah, on to our final story. Revealed by the Financial Times, it was drafted by Israeli businessmen with support from Boston Consulting Group, BCG, and involvement from staff at the Tony Blair Institute. The project imagines Gaza as a privatized high-tech playground, a Trump Riviera with artificial Dubai-style islands and even an Elon Musk smart manufacturing zone, and selling all those on the blockchain as digital tokens. At its core is, of course, a mass displacement scheme, genocide, gentrification. And the proposal: 500,000 Palestinians would be paid to leave, whilst Gaza's land would be handed to private developers via blockchain based trust tokens. One TBI document chillingly called the war's devastation a once in a century opportunity to rebuild Gaza from scratch. TBI denies endorsing the final plan but admits staff joined planning calls and contributed documents. BCG says its consultants acted without authorization, yet their financial model supported the entire scheme, including the claim that removing Gazans would be cheaper than rebuilding for them. The slide deck flaunts Gulf Royal names on highways and logos of Tesla, Amazon, and IKEA, companies unaware of the project. This isn't reconstruction, it's essentially colonization wrapped in a venture capital spin, a plan to erase a population, gentrify their land, and brandish it as so called peace. Gaza doesn't need blockchain ports or luxury hotels. I think we all know that. What it needs is justice, the end of an occupation, and the right for its people to define their own future, not be priced out of it. The Boston Consulting Group has also worked on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the US security contractors on the ground, and now this. Three reports have come out in the last week or so, providing testimony and evidence, and from Israeli soldiers and American contractors, on the ground, instructed to kill unarmed Palestinians or give free license to do whatever they like. AP News a few days ago released their investigation where they were given texts, communications, testimony, and videos from people associated with Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and published. Now, I know the sound quality isn't that great, but I think you can see it alongside myself that this is literally just genocide happening right in front of us. But that is one American security contractor saying, I think you got one, and another shouting, hell yeah, boy, as they fire into a crowd of unarmed civilians along with pepper spray and stun grenades. Fucking insane. Fun little fact, the Boston Consulting Group, who is tied to all of this, one of their most famous ex-employees was actually the now Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Lewis, how insane is all of this? Firstly, can we just talk about Blair really quickly? It feels like his ghost is just hovering about. With the Tony Blair Institute involved in early planning. What does this reveal about the long arm of like liberal interventionism and how institutions like the TBI cloak imperial strategy with some sort of like humanitarian branding?
Yeah, it's what's also funny is that when you read the full report from the Financial Times, and I want to give them credit for this because it's like good journalism. What they did is that when they gathered this evidence, they approached the Tony Blair Institute and said, "Were you involved in this?" And they were like, "No." And then they did this on purpose, and then they went, "Oh, here's the evidence that we have that you guys were involved in this." And they were like, "Well, we never said we weren't directly involved." And it's like good journalism, like because it was two layers of making sure that they couldn't just be like release some generic statement done by a press team. They actually caught them out. But yeah, it's see, Tony Blair got away with war crimes once, and I don't understand why he'd even want to touch something like this. It just simply doesn't make sense. You can't obfuscate the responsibility from the idea that, yes, in the Financial Times report, they specifically say Blair had nothing, the Blair Institute and those two employees who were involved had nothing to do with the idea of how much is it going to cost to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. But they were involved in talks and did some proposals and went to some meetings about, post reconstruction, gentrified, genocidal Gaza. Why would you want to be when you know that Trump has already come out and said it's going to be this, Trump Riviera, and we're actively trying to find places to send the Palestinians abroad? So you are complicit in the potential ethnic cleansing of 2.5 million people. And I just want to drop this in here because it came out just a couple of hours ago and it wasn't included in the show. But as Benjamin Netanyahu is in the US, Israel Katz is the defense minister, probably the most senior person right now in Israel, has announced that they are essentially effectively building a concentration camp in Gaza. I don't know how to interpret it in any other way. They have Israel Katz has announced today that they're building a humanitarian city for 600,000 Palestinians who will be forced to go there. They will not be allowed to leave, and then it will be expanded for the rest of the population of Gaza, where they will be de-radicalized. That's the word that they use, de-radicalized, which is another word for re-education. And then once they're ready to voluntarily emigrate, they can. But until they want to voluntarily emigrate, they will not be allowed to leave the very small, tiny, closed location that we have put them all in. And just to remind everybody, sorry, I know I'm going on a tangent here because I'm just so frustrated right now. I don't know how to contain myself. Um, Gaza was the most densely populated place on the planet before October 7th. So when you've got 50 to 60,000 confirmed dead, more dead under the rubble, more missing, you're still going to be left with in and around anything from 1.8 to 2 million people who were previously the most densely populated population in the entire world being put into an even smaller piece of land just in the tiny part of the south of Gaza. Anyway, but to bring this back to Blair, he knew everything that I have just said, with potentially the exception of the concentration camp. He knew about. He knew about. So why would you even go anywhere near this whatsoever? And I can't think of any other reason but influence and money and power, because this connects you to one of the most powerful consultancies in the world. It connects you to the Trump administration. It connects you to, there was one part of the article which talked about the European Middle East Economic Corridor. There's the potential to build a massive port there. So it's just attached to money, power, influence, just like anything else. And nothing like this would even if everything happened in Gaza that we think is going to happen, there's no way to obviously bring somebody like Blair to account for it. But by all definition, he is, and his institute is aiding and abetting. They are. This is
Yeah,
gentrified genocide,
yeah.
post-genocide Gaza.
Yeah, and it's so scary because in all of this, it always seems that it's the same theme throughout. That let's forget about Palestinian self-determination and let's just have this sales brochure of what Palestine could be. It's just now this economic opportunity for these massive like figureheads, these big tech companies, these people who can literally lock off Venice for a wedding. Like it's absolutely insane. You're slicing Gaza up and the people in it for your own self interest. And I think Blair, I people back him, but I think he's horrendously evil. I think he's an awful, awful man, and this is literally like disaster, like capitalism. This is with drones, with flattening people, with privatizing their land. Like they are making them just then like no existence whatsoever. And I was having a discussion with someone over the weekend as well, this very same person who was denouncing that what's happening in Gaza is not ethnic cleansing. If this doesn't prove that this is ethnic cleansing, then I don't know what would. This is literally pushing all the Palestinians out, all the people in Gaza out, just to be like, hey, let's make it better for you. But it's not going to be for them, is it? It's always going to be for the interests of those who don't care about Palestinian lives and never have cared about Palestinian lives. This is colonization at its finest, but apparently you can get upgrade options with it as well. And I think what we need to do collectively is really, really tear this plan to shreds. Because the saddest part of all of this, Lewis, is I don't think a lot of people will know about the story at all. I think people will probably denounce that it's even real because it sounds insane. It's almost incomprehensible. But I think we need to tear this to shreds before they stamp a like, yeah, made in Gaza sticker on it.
I just want to add one more quick point as well from the. I can't comprehend just how like tech dystopia this is. I can't remember what the book is. I think Curtis has mentioned it before, like
Mm.
the like technocracy type of thing, and like all tying it back to like Peter Thiel and other people like that. It's so insanely dystopian that I don't think a movie has been made about this type of dystopia before. I don't know. Maybe someone can correct me, but just the idea that there was one part of the article where it was describing how any Palestinians who had private land in Gaza will be able to sell their land on the blockchain and then redeem a digital token, which will allow them a permanent residency within the Gaza Strip. I, I, I don't know how many times I could repeat that sentence without being able to fully comprehend just how dystopian it is. I cannot wrap my head around it. I truly cannot. I can get people ignoring war crimes. I can get it. I get it. It's history, right? People just look past it. And we try and get taught how to watch out for the signs, and we've obviously failed it. I can get so many horrible things that happen in the world. I get it. I get why it works. I get the psychology. This is just for me, just so uncomprehendable and so dystopian that it's firstly frustrating me that it's not getting more attention. And how anybody would even put their fingerprints on this. But, when I actually
Yeah.
I made a video about this yesterday on my own social media, and somebody left a comment saying, "Oh yeah, well, nobody's going to invest in this after they know what's happened there, right?" And then immediately the first thing that came to my head is that right now. The Republicans and Donald Trump in America are selling alligator Alcatraz merchandise for their, temporarily quickly built prison in the middle of a swamp surrounded by alligators, where they're bragging about the alligators eating the migrants as people have been rounded up by plainclothes officials with who haven't committed any crimes, and they're being rounded up and sent off to a foreign prison with 80 people living in a cell. And then I remember, like, yeah, of course people will invest in this. 100%, of course they will. They will be all over this. 100%. They don't care.
It's just so, isn't it insane? It just doesn't feel like we're living in a real world, does it? It feels like every day there's something new and something more horrific, more barbaric, more heinous just unfolding in front of us. But I think just to bring it back to the Palestinians, I think they, more than anyone else, um, deserve a bloody voice in this. It feels like, I want to say it again, like there's just no self-determination. I think there's been no mention of their rights in any of this, their trauma, their right to return, their freedom. I think it's just they're consistently being framed as this hurdle of development, like this inconvenient
Mm.
presence. And I think that urban
I'm I'm
planning,
I'm gonna
yeah,
say something controversial, and I don't care, and
I
I
don't
will
know if I'm
happily be
ready. Oh,
I'll happily be the first person to go
I
on
like
record and maybe say this.
controversial.
Maybe I might be, maybe I not be. I'm gonna get to the point where I'm gonna say this is worse than the Holocaust, and the reason why I'm gonna say that, and the reason I'm gonna justify that is because, yeah, you can turn around and say more people died and more people were put, and gassed, but most people didn't know about it, right?
Yeah,
The people who knew about it, like the media in Germany, some of them knew about it, but they were scared to speak out. Obviously, officials knew about it. The soldiers on the ground knew about it, but the world didn't know about it. We're watching this live streamed, and they're about to be put into a concentration camp, and they're about to be
I
shipped,
agree.
with voluntary immigration, and people are getting massacred every single day at humanitarian sites by American contractors and Israeli soldiers. The entire world is watching. Some of us are trying to stop it, but the rest of the world is just going on. And therefore, I will say that, in my opinion, this is worse than the Holocaust because of that.
I
Because
would,
we got
yeah,
taught never again, and
I
we're
would agree with
trying to live
you.
up to that.
I would absolutely, sorry, I cut you off so many times. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You were on a roll and I cut you off, but I
Sorry.
absolutely, no, it's me. I'm the problem. It's not you. I completely agree with you. But, and the same way that I would respond to people, because there are people out there who deny that the Holocaust even happened. It's one of the most well documented things that have ever happened in history. So well documented. And what we're seeing with Palestine is that it's so incredibly well documented, but you have the same people who may or may not deny that the Holocaust happened, deny that what's happening in Palestine is happening at all. That is a cause for concern. The similarities are so that they are there when it comes to the Holocaust and the genocide that's unfolding in Palestine. Sorry, I just saw a comment saying Sarah's a Swiftie. What's that?
Mm. And
Taylor
just to quickly,
Taylor Swift
I know we
fan.
can do this later as well, but, like, just to reply to Edward, yeah, but people in governments knew, and there was intelligence to obviously suggest that that's been released since then. But, like, the general population, right? The people in World War II who are, the women at home making bullets, and people, working in factories, didn't really have access to the information in 1941 that all these people were in concentration camps, but we were doing something about it, right? Like, we were fighting Germany. That's the difference, right? Like, we're not doing anything about it. When I say we, some of us are, obviously, but most governments are not. Um,
It's
and we're watching
difficult.
it happen live streamed, a live stream genocide.
Yeah, and governments aren't doing anything about it. And I think again, what I'm going to come back to is that I think Palestinians deserve self determination, and I will fight tooth and nail to make that happen. And I'll be very loud and proud about it. I think all of us here will be the same. But with that being said, let's go to our comments, please and thank you. I think we've got Cog today.
I'm just gonna
Okay.
breathe a second. Hi, Cog.
Hello.
Hey, so good to have you. Can everyone hear Cog?
Yes, let's just check everyone has. Let's just check everyone's heard me. So, could people just confirm in the chat? It will take a couple of seconds to come through, but we don't need to rush. We've got time. It's all good. I
Coggage.
think from Jim's reaction there, I think I can be heard.
Oh
Hopefully,
no,
it'll
Jim, it's not
confirm this.
Palestine. This is Sudan. Sudan today.
Excellent. Thank
Because
you, everyone.
people don't people forget that one of the biggest displacements is happening in Sudan, where my family is from. Lots of my family have had to relocate and be refugees in Uganda and Ethiopia and Egypt. I think it's one of the most underreported stories. So, Sudanese football shirt, and this went to a charity that contributes money to those in Sudan.
Yes, flag colours are very similar.
Very, but green.
Just to clarify for you, Sarah, Becca kindly put in the chat. Hi, it's me. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Is in a Taylor Swift song, Sarah.
Oh, did I
You're
say
a
that?
Swiftie. Yeah, you're a
God
Swiftie.
forbid.
You said it earlier.
Guys, God forbid. I'm not a Swiftie. I don't really like her. Sorry to any Swifties out there.
Okay, so first of all, let's deal with the super chats. Leo put in £2 for the Lecky meter, which was when we were struggling to go live, which is brilliant. I love that. That's so funny. That's
Okay, we
super.
were just having like post-work troubles because obviously, we all work full time, and
Yes.
sometimes we run into issues between finishing work, getting home, and starting the show. So apologies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
apologies about that.
Sorry.
And Carl kindly gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Thank you so
Thank
much, Carl. You
you.
are fantastic. Which
Thank you,
brings
Carl.
Vicky in with a Turn Left membership,
Thank
Anne
you.
with a Turn Left membership, Jojo with the Turn Left membership, Matilda with the Turn Left membership, and Matthew with the Turn Left membership as well. Thank you so much. And Rachel Atwood said, imagine BB being unable to visit the UN in New York City. That would be
Well,
absolutely
unfortunately,
amazing.
he can.
I think this is if Zoran Mamdani becomes president, because the NYPD would be under. President
As the president?
becomes mayor. Look, I was fantasizing. Lewis, leave me alone. Yes. In which case, Zoran would control the NYPD, and the threat of him being arrested would become a bit more serious.
They're not prescribed. They're not signed up to the ICC though, so it wouldn't. I don't know how it would. I don't know how it would work, unless there's another law in the US that he could try and enact. But
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Just as we were discussing that, Jim Speak gifted 5 more Turn Left memberships, bringing John, Mighty Mouse. I don't know if this is Mighty Mouse named after the MMA fighter, but that's really cool. Hev, Sam, and Ross into Turn Left membership as well. Thank you so much,
Welcome,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you for being here.
Jamie.
Thanks, Jim. Jim's the legend.
Excellent.
Legend, Jim.
And then let's go to our other comments. So, Les Watts said, is Love Island similar to Normal Island?
Yeah, except the bombshells, Lewis. Lewis is the one that walks into the villa later.
Wait, I can't. Why can't I see the comment on my screen?
I can see it, but
I can still see the. Oh, there we go. It's coming up now.
Yeah.
Leftist
It was
tech.
delayed,
That's why.
me. Weird. Sorry.
Leftist tech.
Certainly
That's
not.
why.
I think Normal Island hopefully is less mind numbing than Love Island.
Agreed, Sarah. Agreed. Becca said James McMurdoch is the one who went to prison for beating and kicking his girlfriend in the street when he was a young man. Vile person, should never have been able to stand as an MP. 100%.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that one. Leo said, so Reform are back on the same number of MPs as the Greens. I bet they'll get equal coverage, right? Linked to this, I did want to sort of redirect and ask this question, because obviously they won't get equal coverage. Leo's being sarcastic there, and, we all know that. However, do you think that the potential emergence of this new party and or Zach Polanski sort of being on the rise, Zoran Mamdani being on the rise. Do you think this will potentially push more left wing opinions into the mainstream, given what's going on?
No, I don't. I think you guys know where I stand. In the group chat the other day, I was getting really frustrated, and Callum was like, "Give him time, Sarah." I've been very, very open about where I stand with the Greens. I'm personally a Green supporter. So I'll put that out there. My only frustration comes from their lack of aggression, and I think on the left, particularly this new party that is potentially on the rise, that we won't see left-wing voices being at the forefront. And if anything, I think populist voices, cultural enthusiasts are always the ones that will find themselves at the forefront of any headline. People aren't interested in things like social justice, believe it or not. They're interested in things. They're interested in people who capitalize off their grievances. And I don't know. I don't think this will be enough to get left-wing voices at the forefront. I don't think Green's voice will be at the forefront either, to be honest. I just find that they need to, I've said this a lot, I've said this all the time. They are behind this guise of looking like tree huggers all the time. They look like tree huggers, they look like coffee cup reusable coffee cup drinkers. Like, they need to just be more like aggressive with it. Like, come on, be fucking radical with it, be aggressive with it, be at the forefront. I want you to be super fucking loud, like the people on the right. But I don't know, it won't work like that, will it?
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I'm sorry to be pessimistic, but I just don't think we're going to have like a bigger leftist push until people get even poorer and things get worse. I think it has to get even worse. I'm not saying it has to get complete destitution, but until we find people who can effectively communicate about inequality, disparity, ridiculous wealth, it's just not going to change anything materially in terms of moving towards any sort of actual leftist policy, not just little patches here and there in policy.
I think that we've been poisoned to some degree by having three blue Tory governments in our recent lifetimes and one red Tory government in our recent lifetimes. I reckon we're all just pessimists, to be honest, because I do sort of I do want to be positive about it. I want to be an optimist, but I have to say it is looking quite tricky. But at the moment, I'm more hopeful than I've been for a while. I will say that. And there are reasons to be hopeful. As Rez points out, with regards to Farage and Reform and all the problems that they've had maintaining their MPs, Rez said the thing about Farage is that he can't control and maintain a party. He can only use himself as the strength. It's kind of paradoxical because it relies on him. Is this a weakness we could potentially exploit?
Really good question. Yeah, potentially. But Farage, and I said this earlier, he is a chaos surfer. He's someone who has been able to find himself in different sects of society, on one side of the political spectrum predominantly, and has still been able to garner so much support. But I do think without his presence, yeah, that party would probably fall flat on its face. But I don't see him leaving anytime soon, because I think I've been having so many conversations where people are convinced that Starmer won't be in power for long. That's what people were saying. And that Reform will find their way in. That's a very, very surface level, very, very surface level analysis that people have been giving at the moment. So I don't know. I feel like it's a weakness we can point out, but I don't think people will be willing to listen to it.
Yeah, I like, again, as I said earlier, that I don't think anything's going to happen to Reform until Nigel falls. I think Lee Anderson's too much of a little bitch, and he's willing to put up with anything, so he's not going anywhere. And I don't think Tice is going anywhere. I think it's anyone else is up for what's happened to James and what's happened to Rupert Lowe. But I think those three are probably going to be staying in there, the core, and nothing else. It doesn't matter how many chairmans they have, how many MPs they have leaving, how many scandals. I just don't think it actually matters. There needs to be a scandal for Nigel Farage, something that is so bad that he can't recover from. And I just don't know if it's going to happen, because if you've got the world's media, not the world, some of the world's media, but obviously the UK media, hyper focusing on Farage for the better part of at least 10 years, and they haven't had that scandal yet, it's likely not going to come, but we can hope.
Yes, yeah. I think you'd need to change the image of Nigel Farage in the popular imagination from being the the relatable bloke from down the pub to something like, and I'm not suggesting anything about his character necessarily here, but you'd need people to view him either as a laughing stock in a negative sense, or like a creep in some way, or something like that. It would require a shift in the sort of hegemonic understanding of who Nigel Farage is, I think, in order to bring down his image, which would then bring down reform, which is potentially possible to do. Jim Speaks said, "Oh, sorry, go on."
Just wanted to mention, just for later on as well, can you bring up one of either Edward's comments as well? Because I want to address what he's talking about in the chat just later on when we get to it.
That could be a number of things. I don't know exactly what you're referring
anything
to.
related to the comments I made about the Holocaust, because I want to clarify what I was talking about.
Yes, sure. So I've already got one tagged, actually, because I wanted to sort of like come back on that as well. So Jim Speak said, in relation to the priest that was arrested, the 83-year-old, said, "Come, see the violent inherent in the system," which is a brilliant Monty Python reference for those of you who do not know. And Autumn said, "Get those violent grannies off our streets."
Wait, can you just exactly? Can you just imagine? Yeah, can you just imagine what that police officer? Sorry, this is like such a trivial comment, but like if that police officer is like married to anyone, and then he goes back home, they're like, "Yeah, babe, how's your day at work?" He's like, "Yeah, love, I got all the violent pensioners off the street. The place is safe again. Don't worry about it. The place is safe again. I've got them all off." It's just so insane. An 83-year-old retired priest who literally was sat in a chair protesting. Like, make it make sense. Terrible.
So one of the most annoying things about all of this, first place, genocide in Gaza. Second place, obviously, our government cracking down on this all in an authoritarian way. The third thing is that the right now feel vindicated. They think that when they hear about us complaining about old grannies getting arrested and Palestinian protesters getting cracked down on and Palestinian Action being named a terrorist organization, firstly, they're supporting it, which is completely hypocritical and inconsistent because they don't actually believe in free speech. They just want to own the left and justify their own ideology, but they feel vindicated. They think what's happening to Palestine Action supporters is the same as them getting locked up for advocating for burning hotels down, for engaging in criminal activity, in being in Telegram groups saying they're going to meet up at a mosque and cause destruction, because those are the things that happened. They think what happened over the weekend, is the same thing, and they feel vindicated. So Starmer has just helped vindicate the hard right to far right people in this country who thinks that it was a government crackdown last year and an authoritarian overreach, when actually what the government did in many ways was perfectly reasonable, and actually they had powers that they could have used, but they didn't. And Starmer has just hurt himself on so many levels here, because he's just emboldened those people even further. Idiot.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I started speaking then, and I just left you in silence. I'm so sorry. So yes, 100%, 100% with you both on those. It's just the most bizarre thing to be dealing with, to be honest.
How bizarre.
Yes, how bizarre. Yeah, you get the reference. So Jacqueline said, "I'm sure the photos doing the rounds on social media have been an embarrassment and a PR nightmare for both the Met Police and the Labour government. I think probably more for the latter, personally. But how much damage do you think this has done to the Labour government specifically, but then, of course, the Met Police as well?"
I was frustrated about this yesterday, and I shared it in the group chat, right? So The Guardian is still liberal media, I acknowledge this, but they still do lots of good reporting, and they fail in lots of ways. We criticize them just as much as we would any other liberal media outlet. However, I have expectations still of The Guardian. I was shocked to find yesterday, so Sunday, the day after, when I was just catching up and doing all my rounds on all my news apps and sources, The Guardian didn't publish anything about it. and I was really confused. Like everyone else published about it. Like, why didn't the Guardian? This is like such a Guardian style story, and I was just confused. And there were some other outlets as well who didn't really cover it. I don't know if they were scared of being accused of promoting Palestine action. I'm pretty sure the media know how to navigate that. I was just a bit, I don't know, it just didn't make any sense. And obviously relevant to the question, like it's got attention, but I don't know if it's actually got as much attention as I thought it would. But again, I'm biased because of the media bubble that I live in sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think this will harm the Labour government per se. I think they have harmed themselves in way worse ways. Way worse ways. Wow, Sarah, great. Way worse ways with all the U-turns that they've done. I think they've done. They've damaged themselves in so many ways, in more ways than one. I don't think this will hinder them at all. I think maybe this is because I've just spent a lot of time on Facebook recently, which is very unlike me. And when I'm on there, I feel like everyone I look at must be some sort of deranged. Sorry, it's really bad. Sorry, it's really bad. I was going to say something really bad. A deranged right winger who just like really backs the fact that Palestine Action has now been prescribed as a terrorist organization and all of this sort of stuff. Like, so I don't think this will harm them. I don't. I think they've harmed themselves in different ways.
Yes, I think this will only sort of catalyze the problems that Labour is already having keeping its base. I think a lot. It might even push some of the base that have kind of stuck around, going, "Well, this is better than the Tories," over the line, and they see pensioners being arrested. Um, but it's interesting, from our perspective, because we've been kind of warning about Keir Starmer's authoritarian streak. And when I say we, I don't just mean us at Turn Left. I also mean the people in our audience and watching. Like, I'm sure lots of people in the chat will be able to confirm that they were warning about Keir Starmer's more authoritarian tendencies, his tight controlling of internal elections in Labour, the purging of anyone vaguely to the left um, Mussolini, apparently. Like there's a sort of like general consensus, right, that Keir Starmer was authoritarian, and we sort of tried to do some to give some warnings about this. Um, but of course, the left doesn't have a very large voice. It's not that people didn't listen; it's that people were never really given the choice to listen because left-wing voices were sort of pushed out of the mainstream. Yeah, it's something we've got to consider. These authoritarian streaks, the signs of these authoritarian streaks were there already. Mike Ellison said, "Western people don't care unless Netflix creates a series about it," which is, I think, quite a pessimistic view. One that is
Yeah,
correct, but
Mike
pessimistic.
is pessimistic in the chat, and I don't know why, but he's very negative towards me. I don't know
So,
why.
but
He was in the last show as well.
I
I
think
think
you've done
there's
a great
there's a
job.
positive spin to this though, which is that uh, one of the ways to persuade people, one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal, is stories and art. As one of the strengths of the left is something that we can really weaponize. Like I really do think of the what is it, Mr. Bates versus the postman,
Yeah,
versus the post office.
yeah.
Yeah. Like these
Versus the
stories, the
postman.
stories that are told in documentaries and in dramatizations, like they are really powerful for getting people to feel very differently about a topic or issue. And the left has a lot of creatives, a lot of artists on its side. We need to be weaponizing that more and making more of it. I think that'd be really
Is it
useful.
sad though that like we have to put music over something to make people feel things? Like that there are moments where I watch the news and I sit through it and I watch it, but I cry at the things that are being shown. I feel like you're right. We live in an era now where people are so desensitized that they need some like melody in the back that's like got violins that will try and like tear at their heartstrings a little bit. It's sad that we have to do that. Really sad.
But they've got even more dystopian, isn't it? Because like we have literal Palestinians living in rubble doing TikTok trends,
Yeah.
just to like stay relevant on the FYP, so they can hopefully
Mm.
get some sympathy and donations potentially off people. Like it's a absolute insane world. I don't know if anybody's seen those videos where it's like a stitch of like a really popular video, and then suddenly like 3 seconds in, it just cuts to like a Palestinian begging you for help. It's insane, the media ecosystem that we live in now, and the way it's, I don't know, presented to us. But in a weird way, this is going to sound weird and twisted, I like where we're at right now with the fact that we have access to media that we can put stuff out there in the way that we couldn't 10, 15 years ago. Meaning, think about maybe where we would be on the topic of Palestine right now without the ability to post on places like YouTube and social media.
Art is powerful. Like art
Yeah.
is powerful, and I'm a huge literature fanatic. Like guys, anyone who knows me knows I read all the time. I love literature. I read it. I love music. I go to gigs. Like I love this stuff. So I know the power that can be evoked through art and through that sort of medium. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, isn't it?
You said about Sarah, you said about like you have to put the music to the background. You know, and you sort of like cry watching the news. You know, you feel that sort of emotion when you're just watching the news. I would potentially put it to you that the music for you is given by the context of the sort of people you hang out with and the background knowledge that you have, the fact that you're, you know, a very intelligent person and seek out
Sometimes.
those like but you it's true, you know, I don't mean it, I'm not just trying to flatter you, I mean it in the sense of like you seek out and judge bias and analyze the truthfulness of what's presented to you, and not everybody has those skills, and so that's the music that gives you the context to be able to watch that footage and go, yeah, this is really upsetting, but
Mm.
other people need that other little emotional push, you know.
Mm.
And it's not, I don't think it's that they're you know, that they're I use the word intelligent, but maybe it's not the right word. Trained in analytics is perhaps the word that
Mm.
I'm looking for, because it's not that those people are like less intelligent, it's that they haven't, a lot of the time they haven't been given the opportunity and certainly haven't been pushed to be critical about the things that they're reading and
Mm.
what they're, you know, what they're consuming, and media analysis, and
Yeah.
it's so important.
And just to clap back at Mike, because he obviously doesn't like me, I'm just going to be a little patriotic just for a second, because I think anyone who probably is in part of our audience and anybody who's part of Turn Left can very much acknowledge the past of the British Empire before I invoke this, and even what modern Britain has done. But I will absolutely be patriotic by the fact that before Netflix existed, Mike, the biggest protest in this country's entire history was a march against the Iraq War. Before Netflix existed, it was a big part, the people in this country who spent years, just like the Palestinian protesters are doing right now, trying to stop apartheid in South Africa. So yes, if somebody creates a form of art form, whether that's a beautiful piece of photography which can change the world, or a documentary, or a brilliant news article, then yes, that is how people can become informed on a topic. So yeah, it's not just about Netflix, Mike. There are plenty of good people in this country, probably even people in our audience who have were on some of those marches and stood up for those things. So there you go.
The the Crimean War in the 1840s was absolutely groundbreaking, and led to a load of revolutions in how war was fought, both on the in terms of like the conditions that people faced, but also in terms of the remuneration which people were owed for going to war. And a large part of that has to do with the fact that it was the first war in which there was widespread reporting. There was widespread reporting back to the center of the empire, back home, and that's something that's always worth bearing in mind. These things matter. The photo from Vietnam of the little girl who'd been hit. Everybody knows the photo that I'm on about. I don't have to explain it, but you know the one. Makes a huge difference. But we're rambling on about this a little
Yeah,
bit.
so
But Jamie is a girl's name too, said these people know they will never be held accountable for anything. 100% agree. And I know you're going to disagree with Edward in a minute, so I did want to bring up something that Edward said, which I thought you could perhaps agree with. And it was a really good point just in and of itself. What Lewis is describing is 100% exactly the same process the British used in Kenya's Gulag system in Kenya in the 50s. And Edward advised us to read Caroline Elkin's book, Britain's Gulag. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
really, really good point. Kenya is
100%.
an interesting case study.
Yeah, and just to add to like the precedent that is being set, like most of again what Israel is doing is actually not new or unique in any way, as Edward's pointing out. Like the report that we talked about last week, where they're allegedly drugging the flour and the aid. It's shocking, but it's not new. It's been done multiple times. Obviously, most famously in China, the Opium Wars. Like it's shocking, but it's not new. And that's probably even more shocking when you realize that it's not new. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words.
I just want to give Sarah an opportunity to jump in on this one if she wants.
No, I
No,
think you
that's all
guys
good.
have worded it perfectly.
That's all good. So Jim Speak said, America is a cancer. Oh, this is brilliant. America is a cancer, by which I, of course, mean it was born on the 4th of July, of course. Which, I'm sorry, that is a top tier comment. That's brilliant.
I'm sorry, Jim. I've always said Jim's a legend. Jim, I've been consistent when I've said that. You are funny.
We do have a lot of great people in our
We
audience.
do. We have a great community.
Yes, yeah, like everyone whose comments we brought up today, like we might disagree with some of you, but that's absolutely fine. Yeah, but you're fantastic, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
It doesn't go unnoticed. The support doesn't go unnoticed.
yes, 100%. And also, let's get to the Holocaust stuff. So Edward Sexby said at the time that you said about you think this is worse than the Holocaust. Bullshit, Lewis. The world did know about the Shoah. The Western governments just chose to ignore it. I think there is some truth to that. Of course, Third Reich was my specialism in terms of my academic career. So it's somewhere that I've got an interest in, and what the West thought of the Third Reich is another area of interest to me.
So
I would
can I
just
just
say
clarify what I meant? Oh, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I would just say though, I do agree with the sort of the point that you're making in that it's a great degree more visible. However, I wouldn't put things as worse and not worse, and because there's all sorts of clapbacks you could make. For example, just the scale of the Holocaust is unlike anything we've seen since. Like we're talking like single events where in a day thousands of people were and tens of thousands of people were shot dead at a single location. I don't think we've seen anything like that since. But sorry, I didn't want to stop you saying what you were going to say, Lewis.
Okay, here we go. So when I say nobody knew about it, I'm not saying it from like the actual like literal sense. Like, yes, people escaped some of these camps. Yes, we had intelligence. Yes, we had information. There were even some news articles that existed throughout that period that published these reports. It wasn't in the same way that it is now. It's not something that was in the available to like the public on a daily basis in the 50 different news articles or references or however they consume their media through the radio. It wasn't reported in that way. And please, Cog, as well, your area, tell me if I am wrong when it comes to this. It's not something the level of access of information that we have. Obviously, it's not fair to directly compare it, but what we know about what is happening on the ground, what the world currently knows about what is currently happening on the ground, what's happened on the ground, not just since October 7th, but essentially for the better part of many decades, which in part is obviously twisted through lots of propaganda and lots of other things. But in terms of what we've seen specifically since October 7th, the information that we have available to us is completely incomparable to that period of time as what was available to the general public. And it is under the different circumstances of like, yes, we didn't necessarily go and fight Germany to stop the camps. That's not how it went down, right? And we didn't know the full scale of exactly what was happening. The general public did not know about that. We had information, we had leaks, we had people who did escape. We did not know the complete full scale of exactly what was going on until we liberated the camps, right? We didn't not know the full and complete scale of it. And that is the complete difference. Pretty much everything that has happened, we through Gaza, we know and we know publicly. Obviously, there are lots of bits of disputed information, which is normal in these circumstances. But when it's this clear and everyone in the world has access to all of this information, in terms of it's worse for the level of humanity, in terms of
Mm.
it's worse for the fact that we got brought up, and I might even say something else more controversial. Who knows? I think we've almost like taught how we are taught about the Holocaust and what happened in World War II in general and the rise of Hitler wrong. And I think we can say that now. And the reason why I'm saying that is that how can we teach it in the way that we currently teach it and see the results of how people are not reacting to it, right? Because the reason why, especially in, I'd say, European schools, because I don't know how the rest of the world teaches it, everybody teaches it at different levels to different degrees. But when you come into year 7 in the UK, that every single year throughout history, from year 7, 8, and 9, unless you choose to do a GCSE about it and take it up further, you spend a lot of time on World War II, right? And the point of that is not just because obviously it's something that happened still relatively recently, because of the scale of atrocity and death, and not even just the Holocaust itself, but just everything that happened attached to it. And if we can now be in this period and people can't see the connection to what is happening then and now in terms of the dehumanization of a group of people to the point where it's basically accepted within the world that we're not going to stop them from being ethnically cleansed and mass murdered, we have failed to teach about the Holocaust. We have. We need to focus more on the rise of Hitler and focus more on about the dehumanization, which we do learn. We do learn that, and I'm not denying that at all in any way. But I actually think now, retrospectively, it's more important to learn about the before, the rise, rather than this is the scale of the atrocity. But because we're human, our natural bias is going to lean towards like the ending, the final numbers, the total tally, the count, the cost. And I think that's where we've potentially maybe gone wrong in the way that we teach it. Because how can the world see what's happening right now, and then we can't turn around and say we've successfully taught World War II and the Holocaust if this is just happening now? We haven't at all. But anyway, I don't know if that's controversial or not, but that is currently how I feel about the situation. And just to finish off replying to Edward, the general public wasn't, the information was there, it was out there, it wasn't accessible, not everybody was informed on it, and again we were already fighting them, and that's like the difference that I'm trying to compare to. Right now we're not doing that. They're not our adversaries, they're our allies. We're shaking their hands, we're having meetings with them, we're still trading with them, and that's the major difference. We're complicit too.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was quite the rant.
There was a period of about a year when we weren't, I would generally mark Kristallnacht at the point when the Holocaust moved from uh, mere persecution towards extermination. Like I say, mere persecution. It was horrible, horrible persecution. But it hadn't reached the point of extermination, and generally, I would mark Kristallnacht as that point. But that would mean that there was a period between 1938 and 1939 when we were not in combat with with them, and this was going on. As for knowledge, my understanding is that inside Germany, you could basically, it was a case of a bit like now, in terms of what you can expect from modern genocides, is you can find this information if you want to. If you want to, you can find this information. And of course, it's different around the world because one, there was a war. We were already at war, as you said, and two, because information did not move as easily back then. But still, inside Germany at the least, and inside the German Reich, you could find out this information if you wanted to. But of course, most people didn't want to. It's largely to do, not with the availability of the information, but whether or not people wanted to know the information. And that's that. I think you're right to say that we don't teach it right, but the way in which we don't teach it right is that we teach it as sort of like, well, everybody was a monster, and while there's truth in like a moral sense that what happened, it was monstrous and the people who carried
Mm.
out were monstrous.
I,
In
I Oh, sorry, go
it's
ahead.
very practical. It's very impractical to look at ourselves as monsters, and we need to be able to see the monster in ourselves in order to prevent that from manifesting itself in the future. Christopher Browning is a historian who emphasizes, he literally wrote a book called Ordinary Men, talking about how a lot of the people who made up the death squads which carried out large parts of the Holocaust and made up the death squads who were camp manning the concentration camps were very much ordinary people. They weren't, particularly psychotic in terms of like their behavior leading up to that point. That they were ordinary people in the sense of anyone could have become that, and we need to be really wary of that going forward. Sorry, I'm ranting because it's
No, I just wanted to really sorry as well. Just want to add this. I feel like it needs to be taught intersectionally between stuff like psychology, right? Like, imagine if you incorporated the Milgram study. Was it Milgram or Milgram? The Milgram study of the 1950s, right? I think he was a Jewish psychologist. I think he was like Jewish American. Everybody knows the study. You've seen it in some form or another. How will people obey? It's the shock machine. One person's in a room, one person's in another room. It's fake. It's set up. The person doesn't know that they're not shocking someone, and the guy wearing the medical coat convinces the basically innocent bystander in the space of literally a few minutes to deliver a deathly shock to a person in another room who at that point in theory in the experiment is pretending to be unconscious. And I think off the top of my head, because I haven't read the study in years, between like 60 and 70% of people get up to the deadly shock just because a guy in a medical coat is telling you to do it. And I feel like that is so important to know and understand when it comes to like these types of topics. It's not just a case of here is the history. It is about like, here is what happened, here is why it happened, and look, by the way, here's like psychological experiments that we've carried out multiple times years after this happened to prove that pretty much most people had the potential in them to do this when put in the right conditions. And that's a scary part of humanity, but I think it needs to be taught more in that way, intersectionally.
I will
I,
say,
I,
let
I can't
Sarah.
I can't no I can't add to this. I took geography GCSE, didn't I? So so I learned about groins and longshore drift. So
Oh,
no,
brilliant! Very handy. It's coming back.
yeah.
Yeah, if we need something coloured in, we'll let you know.
Let me know if you want some coordinates. Let me know.
Yeah.
I can't even hold a map correctly.
Yes.
Fuck
No,
done.
me no. Don't worry about. It.
No, you guys honestly said it so well, so
I
I can't even add.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree. Milgram is important when it comes to this. Um, However, there's also a wider structure of talking about stochastic violence and how a lot of the violence that was committed was initiated by those fairly low down the chain of command trying to impress those above. And that sort of what we'd refer to as cumulative radicalization has a really nasty effect, particularly on minorities. And understanding that structure is really important.
Is that similar to what people do with Trump, where like all these kind of like low to mid level politicians try and do something radical to get his attention? Is that
Yes.
kind of similar?
Yeah, it's the exact structure. The Nazi regime was a polycratic structure, as in you had Hitler at the top and all of the people underneath him vying for an opportunity to impress him. And similarly with Trump, a lot of Republican governors and stuff are always looking for opportunities to be more cruel and more sadistic to be able to impress him, which leads us nicely onto the final comment, which was from Carl, Carl with the night hair, who said, Alligator Alcatraz sounds like something a knockoff Dr. Evil could come up with. And yes, what do we think about Alligator Alcatraz?
You know what? I bet somebody could actually convince Donald Trump to just like in Austin Powers. Like there's like is it Austin Powers where it's like there's lasers on the sharks' heads in the water? I think is that Austin Powers? I'm pretty sure somebody could convince Donald Trump to like say that in an interview, like, oh yeah, we're gonna get these lasers on them or something like that. I don't know. It's just there was an interview with him over the weekend. I'm literally just like fed up. There was an interview with him over the weekend talking about enriched uranium, and tell me if I'm doing the science wrong, because it's like a heavy metal on the periodic chart, he thinks that the Iranians couldn't have carried it away because it's so heavy, because it's a heavy metal on the periodic table, but he doesn't understand that like it's not, it's like a very small amount of like uranium to take away. And it's just kind of like, and this is the guy who's selling Alligator Alcatraz merch. Can someone wake me up? Can someone please wake me up? Please take me off the meds, whatever you've got me on, however I'm dosed right now. Just please take me off of them.
Yeah, it's not governance, is it? It's just fucking punishment theatre. I don't like it.
And if I got the science wrong, I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me. But it's something, yeah. Like, I don't pretend to know the science, but that's the president of the US.
I think personally, Mamdani is missing a trick because right now, obviously, you got the alligator Alcatraz merch. Mamdani should be selling alligator hunter merch. Like he should be selling like caps
You're
with his face on
right.
it that say alligator hunter and him like or like t-shirts that say alligator hunter and him hunting a crocodile that's like
Yeah,
partially Donald Trump, with Donald Trump's hair or something like that.
I agree. And I think that's how the left would win. If we are, because we're funny people. Like if we were witty and just played to the tune of all the populists of those on the right, then I think we might actually find ourselves in a pretty decent position. I agree
Yeah, but
with you.
if
Yeah.
Mamdani started selling a T-shirt saying like "Eat the rich," they'd probably arrest him for like inciting political violence or something.
No, they prescribe him as a terrorist
Oh, they're going to do
organisation.
that anyway. They're going to try and do
Yeah,
that anyway.
they're
Yeah.
trying. But someone's looking into the possibility of them trying to invoke some niche law, where it got brought in like years ago, where you can like prescribe somebody because they're like a communist, because it was like the Cold War and stuff like that. And they're also trying to
Yes.
take his citizenship off of him.
Oh yeah, they're going to try and do that regardless. This is the thing, though. You can't back down just because they're going to try and take you down. They're going to try and take you down regardless. You've got to be like Eric Adams' level of complicity before they will stop trying to take you down. At which point you are a Republican wearing blue. Like, give up at that point. So I think, always bring the fight to them. And if you can bring the fight to them in funny memes, which also represent them as weak and you as strong, let's do it. Let's do it.
Agreed.
But yes, let's hand back over to Sarah.
You're amazing, Cog. Honestly, I learned so much from you. I really do. And I learned so much from you, Lewis. I genuinely do. I just love that I'm back. Good to be back. Thank you so much,
Good
Lewis.
to have you back.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back. I'm gutted I missed Friday though, but it is what it is. We are where we are. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you to Lewis as well for his amazing insight. He has been nothing short of amazing, as per bloody usual. But that is all we have time for. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. All of you, our amazing community, all the donations, all of your comments, your likes, and your shares. Like, it's wonderful. And remember to like the stream, obviously. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. Tell a friend of a friend of a friend that we exist. If you want to see us grow, then head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. And there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly. Or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution, but don't put yourself out. Alternatively, did I say you can become a member on YouTube for 99p? Can't remember. There we go. But that's it for us. I hope you guys have an amazing week. The weather's going to get better, so make sure you stay hydrated. Thanks to all of you. See you guys on Friday. Take care.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.